Hi, everybody. This is Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we are not in the archive today because there's construction going on. And I decided to go ahead and pre record the show because I'm going to be doing some yard work at the archive. And I'll be all sweaty and covered with mosquito bites, and it's just not pleasant. I won't be in a good mood to talk about films. So today we're going to watch kind of a mixed bag of stuff. Most of it is Coronet because we've been scanning the Coronet film collection, of which they sent us a couple of years ago, sent us 14 pallets of films. First film we're going to watch is Accounting Basic Procedures, and it starts off with some exciting music to get you ready for what you're about to watch. And I love when they use jaunty music too, and then immediately fall into some pretty tedious stuff. Next, we're going to watch Animals Are Different and Alike, some great biology stuff. Then Missouri River, background for social studies, which kind of examines how the importance of the Missouri River to the people in the area, and the goods and the bads. Unfortunately, there is some triggering flooding footage in that. Then a film that I have never seen before, and I need to see what year this was made. I'm going to look real quick. It was made in 1959. It's the Human Body Reproductive System, and it starts with an interesting warning, which suggests that it should be shown to masculine audiences separate from feminine audiences. Then it goes into detail and talks about sexual organs. Now, it doesn't show anything. It's all illustrations. But it's kind of pioneering in a way to think that they actually showed them to both men and women, or boys and girls, to show just the sex organs to both sexes. But it's very interesting to see what they don't show you, and then how they kind of hint at it. It's really messed up. I'm not going to give it away, but it's really, when I watched, I was like, whoa, man, all right. Then finally, I paid to get a film scanned at HD because I have yet to find a good quality copy of it, and this was for a stock footage client, but ultimately you get to see a better copy of this. It's Hemp for Victory, made by the U.S. Department of Agriculture for the war effort to basically say that, hey, farmers, make hemp so we can make rope and make other products with it. This film itself was shown in the 70s, and it was toured around with suddenly I'm blanking on it, the marijuana film, something Madness. Oh boy, I haven't had enough coffee yet today, so what's the name of it? I am blanking on it. It's not marijuana. Reefer Madness. Duh. Absurd. So it was toured around by NORML, the organization that was trying to reform marijuana laws in the United States. And it was shown as like, well, look, here's the U.S. government says that hemp is good, it's good for the country. And then suddenly there was this shift, and then this film came out. Now, what's interesting is that NORML portrayed the Reefer Madness as a government film, because at the beginning of Reefer Madness, there's this, I feel like it's the Attorney General or somebody is, U.S. Attorney General is quoted as saying that this is a horrible plague to our young people and to our culture, marijuana. And Thing is, the film itself is an exploitation film. It was not made by the government. It was made to make a buck about the headlines and the fear-mongering associated with marijuana at the time. And so Hemp for Victory is this like, hey, yay, let's make this for the war effort. And so you get to watch that. Maybe someday I'll show Reefer Madness. I don't really have a good copy of it. I do have a copy of Sex Madness, though, which is about syphilis. Not as much fun. But thanks for watching today. I very much appreciate your eyeballs. If you like what you saw, you can donate to us. And what I'll do is actually any donations that we get, I'll just forward to an organization in the western North Carolina mountains who's been suffering from flooding. But ways that you can support us is via the Super Thanks button, which you can do in the YouTube chat. You can go to ko-fi.com/avgeeks, patreon.com/avgeeks. Those are other ways to support us. But also just sharing what we do. That would be great. And I just realized my shirt blends into the background, the wood paneling. But thanks again for watching. I appreciate showing these films to you. I'm sorry I'm not there in person, but I might dip in to read comments. But you guys have a great weekend. It's my birthday weekend, so that might be a reason to donate. How about that? But everybody take care, and we'll see you on Monday. Bye.
Our daily lives are made up of many financial transactions. But even the simplest transaction usually affects the financial records of some business. Records must be kept so that the people who operate a business will know its financial condition. It is the job of bookkeepers and accountants to record and interpret these business records and to prepare reports that are easy to understand. To help you understand what is meant by accounting, we're going to apply it to a very simple business operation. Jim Wilson, a high school senior, operates a lawnmower rental service from his father's garage. Two summers ago, Jim purchased a power mower for $100. He rented the mower mainly to boys who mowed lawns for homeowners. Last year, Jim purchased a second mower, for which his father lent him $100. Jim has been repaying his father with interest. Jim's father has suggested, since Jim is going away to college in the fall, that he sell his business. Someone who is interested in buying it is one of Jim's customers, Fred Davis, a sophomore at Jim's school. Jim knows that Fred is a business student, and so will probably ask, how much did Jim make last year? What equipment does he own? And how much money does he owe? So that Jim can answer these questions, Jim's father is going to help him make out what accountants call a balance sheet. In the balance sheet for his mower service, Jim will list what he owns, his assets, and he will list what he owes, his liabilities. Now, what do Jim's assets include? They include his desk, chair, and office supplies, 2 used mowers, gasoline, oil, spare parts, a repair kit, $8 owed to him by Mrs. Jones, and $9 owed to him by Mrs. Green. After listing his assets, Jim totals them. $263 represents his total assets. Now, what about his liabilities? His liabilities include the $33 he still owes his father, a $12.50 repair bill which he has not yet paid, and for newspaper advertising, a bill for $6 which he has not yet paid. Jim totals them. $51.50 represents Jim's total liabilities. Knowing his assets, $263, Jim subtracts his liabilities, $51.50. The difference, $211.50, is his net worth. Jim adds the net worth to the liabilities. As you can see from this balance sheet, assets equals liabilities plus net worth. Now, Jim and his father are working out a second kind of business report, which accountants call an income statement, or a profit and loss statement. This shows Jim's income and expenses for the past year. Jim has listed his only source of income, mower rentals. And he has listed and totaled all his expenses. He has subtracted his total expenses from his income to find his net income, or net profit. And here are the balance sheet and income statement that Jim has rewritten for Fred Davis to see. On the basis of Jim's reports, Fred has agreed to purchase Jim's business for its net worth. Fred would like to work with Jim for a week to set up a bookkeeping system. This will give Jim an opportunity to learn more about bookkeeping and accounting. Fred Davis is making a record of the assets, liabilities, and net worth of his new business in a book called a journal. This is the first step taken whenever formal records of a business are begun, and is called making the opening entry. The opening entry in the journal is made from the information on the balance sheet. Assets on the left side of the balance sheet are listed first in the journal, and their amounts are recorded in the left-hand amount column, the debit column. Liabilities on the right side of the balance sheet are listed next in the journal, and their amounts are recorded in the right-hand column, the credit column. Now Fred writes a brief explanation of these entries in the journal. He records that these entries came from the balance sheet of August 31st. During the operation of any business, transactions occur that change the value of the assets and the liabilities. Fred explains that accountants summarize these changes in a book called a ledger. Each account in the opening entry will be placed on a separate page of this ledger. Transferring a journal entry to a ledger account is called posting. Furniture is a debit account in the journal. Its amount is recorded on the left or debit side of the furniture account in the ledger. Fred writes in the date as it is shown in the journal, and the explanation balance. Fred goes on to make up one account in his ledger for each debit that was listed in his journal. Each time, the amounts are recorded on the left or debit side. But for his credit accounts, such as the newspaper advertising bill, the amount is recorded on the right or credit side of the account. Fred is making out one more account in his ledger for cash, since cash will also be involved in his transactions. Fred will post his journal entries to ledger accounts once a month. While the basic records of his business will be kept in a ledger, Fred is explaining that the daily transactions of his business will be recorded in this special cash journal. This cash journal has a cash debit column and a cash credit column. It also has a general debit column and a general credit column. Every journal entry has both a debit part and a credit part, and the debit amount always equals the credit amount. When cash comes in for lawnmower income, such as this $8, the amount is recorded in the cash debit column because cash is an asset. For the credit part of the entry, Fred credits lawnmower income in the general credit column. When cash is used to buy gasoline, the amount is recorded in the general debit column. For the credit part of the entry, Fred records the amount in the cash credit column because cash is decreased. When Fred pays the bill to the Frontier Enterprise for advertising, he is decreasing a liability, so the amount is recorded in the general debit column. Cash is also decreased, so cash is credited in the cash credit column. The accounting procedures we've seen used for this small business are applied in much the same way in large businesses, where balance sheets and income statements prepared from journals and ledgers show a business's financial condition. At the end of the week, Fred is ready to move the mower rental operation to his own home. Even in this simple operation, Jim has begun to see the importance of bookkeeping and accounting, a fundamental part of all successful business today.
There are many different kinds of animals to see on a farm. Bob lives on a farm, and his cousin Jimmy is visiting him. Jimmy is learning many things about animals from Bob. There are not only animals in the barnyard. Bob has many pets. He has a dog named Pal, a cat named Satin, a parakeet named Fluff, and 2 goldfish without names. And Bob also has a wonderful collection of model animals. These remind Jimmy of some of the animals he's been seeing on the farm. There are many cows here. Jimmy saw one baby calf getting milk from its mother. Cows have babies. And pigs have babies too. All animals have babies. But not all babies get milk from their mothers. Baby chicks don't. They eat seeds, just as the mother hen does. This is one way chickens are different from pigs and cows. Jimmy is that animals are alike in some ways and different in some ways. For instance, the elephant reminds him that animals are size. Elephants are bigger than any of the animals on the farm. Some animals are very big, while some animals, mice, are very small. Animals are also different in what they eat. Some animals, like lions, eat other animals. Some animals, like bears, eat both plants and animals. And some animals, like cows, eat just plants. But even though animals may eat different kinds of food, all animals have to find food to eat. This is one of the ways in which all animals are alike. Bob sees a rabbit eating some plants in his mother's garden. Pal will chase the rabbit away. The rabbit runs away to protect itself. That's another way animals are alike. All animals protect themselves from their enemies, although they may protect themselves in different ways. Pal is a good runner. Running makes him breathe fast. Breathing helps an animal get oxygen from the air. The boys know that all animals need oxygen. But what about animals that live in water? Do they need oxygen too? Yes, animals like fish get oxygen from water. And so Jimmy has learned some important ways in which all animals are alike. But Jimmy knows that all animals are not alike in every way. For example, Pal has a backbone. Jimmy can feel it. Many other animals have backbones. Jimmy has a backbone. All people do. Fluff has a backbone. All birds do. The goldfish have backbones. All fish do. But do all animals have backbones? No. Many animals, such as worms, don't have backbones. This is an important way animals are different. Some animals don't have backbones, and some animals do. Many animals with backbones are alike in certain ways. Some of them have hair on their bodies. Dogs have hair. Horses have hair. Cows have hair. Animals that have hair and backbones are called mammals. Cows are mammals. Pigs are mammals. Another way in which all mammals are alike is that baby mammals need milk, which they get from their mothers. Only mammals give milk. Birds are not mammals, but all birds are alike in certain ways too. Looking at Fluff, Jimmy can see some of the ways in which birds are alike. Fluff doesn't have hair on his body as mammals do. Fluff is covered with feathers. Chickens have feathers too. So do ducks. All birds have feathers. And all birds, like the pigeons on the farm, have wings. A hummingbird's wings move so fast you can hardly see them. An ostrich has wings too, but it's a big bird, too heavy to fly. And like all birds, an ostrich has 2 legs, just as Fluff does. Jimmy is learning that all birds are alike in certain ways. There's another animal that has wings. A butterfly. But a butterfly isn't a bird, it's an insect. Not all insects have wings, but insects are all alike in certain ways too. Bob will try to catch an insect to show Jimmy how all insects are alike. A grasshopper. Jimmy's going to count the grasshopper's legs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A grasshopper has 6 legs. All insects have 6 legs. Butterflies have 6 legs. Ants have 6 legs. Having 6 legs is one way in which all insects are alike. When we find animals that are alike in many ways, they may belong to the same family of animals. Satin, for example, is a mammal, and also belongs to a group of animals called the cat family. Satin has sharp claws that are good for catching and holding food and for climbing. Lions have sharp claws too. So have tigers. Lions and tigers are members of the cat family. All members of the cat family look something like an ordinary house cat. Jimmy wonders if there is also a dog family of animals. Yes, there is. Pal is a member of the dog family. His claws are different from the cat family claws. These short, thick claws are not very good for holding onto things or for climbing. What other animals might be members of the dog family? A wolf and a fox look something like a dog. A wolf is a member of the dog family, and so is a fox. A wolf, a fox, and a dog are all members of the dog family of animals. Jimmy is noticing things about animals he never thought about before. During the rest of his vacation, he's going to learn much more about how animals are different and how they are alike.
This is the Missouri, the Big Muddy, the longest single river in the United States. The river and its tributaries drain more than 500,000 square miles of land. The Missouri River Basin stretches from the Continental Divide to the Mississippi River. It includes land in 10 states, about a seventh of the nation's area. There's a variety of climates in the basin. For instance, the northwestern part of the basin receives only a few inches of rain annually. Droughts may last for many months. And they may end with violent rainstorms and flash floods. These semi-arid conditions are found in many parts of the northwestern basin. In contrast, the southeastern portion of the basin has abundant rainfall. Regular rainfall means the flow of the Missouri is more stable here, and that it can be used in a limited way for transportation. Because of the humid climate and rich soil of the southeastern basin, crops grow well here. The region produces a third of the nation's bread grains, a third of the wool, 1/5 of the beef, and from its large herds of dairy cattle, 1/5 of the nation's butter. Agriculture in the Missouri River Basin plays a significant part in the nation's economy. In fact, the basin has always been vital to the nation. Its importance began early in our history, when it was hoped that the Missouri River would lead to the Pacific Ocean. Lewis and Clark began their exploration of the river in 1804. They found a land rich in wildlife, but no water passage to the Pacific. This wildlife soon brought other men to the basin. Hunters, and trappers, and traders who came to the basin for profit. The frontiersmen were followed by pioneers who at first used the Missouri River as a highway to the fertile farmlands of the Great Plains. And as these frontiersmen and pioneers moved farther up the basin, they built settlements. Many of these settlements would become important cities. Wagon trains used Independence, Missouri as a starting point for westward movement, spurring the development of that city. Ranchers drove their cattle to Kansas City, Kansas, and it became an important market town. And the railroads made Omaha, Nebraska a major rail center. Three of the settlements on the Missouri River became state capitals: Jefferson City, Missouri; Pierre, South Dakota; and Bismarck, North Dakota. But even though the basin has played an historic role in our nation's development, the Missouri River and its tributaries have also been a serious threat. The basin rivers have periodically overflowed with destructive results. Since the 1920s, floods in the Missouri River Basin have taken several hundred lives and caused billions of dollars of property destruction. In spite of the damage done by floods, it wasn't until 1944 that an extensive federal program of water resources development was begun. The entire river basin was studied and a long-range program developed. Dams were constructed at key points. Behind the dams, water was stored in reservoirs that became great man-made lakes. The construction of flood walls offered communities some protection from floods. The building of levees along the river protected thousands of acres of farmland. The federal government has also tried to make the Missouri River an important inland waterway. Much effort has been put into dredging projects that help keep the river channel open. As a result of federal programs, 6 major dams now span the Missouri. This is Fort Peck in Montana, one of the largest earth dams in the world. Its reservoir stretches over 130 miles up the Missouri. When precipitation swells the basin rivers to flood stage, much of the stormwater is held back in reservoirs. Because of the dams, the number and size of floods have been reduced. When flooding is no longer a danger, excess runoff is returned to the river. However, some of the water is used to produce electricity. Generators like these at the Oahe Dam in South Dakota provide Missouri River Basin settlements with electric power. Water stored in reservoirs has made it possible to irrigate and farm a limited number of acres in parts of the basin where there's little rain. Water from reservoirs is also used directly by people in the region. A vast amount of time, money, and effort has gone into taming the Missouri River and in making it a more useful tool for the people who live in the basin. But in spite of all this work, many problems remain. There have been disappointments as well as successes. Water pollution of the lower Missouri River requires immediate attention. Wastes from settlements and industries have turned parts of the river into an open sewer. While water pollution is a problem in part of the basin, some people feel that the basin would be best served by using the river as a sewer. They argue that it would be cheaper to develop other water resources than to build a new sewer system. Another problem is that efforts to turn the Missouri River into an important inland waterway have not been entirely successful. Stabilizing the navigation channel and dredging the river continually have not succeeded in providing a channel deep enough for shipping every day of the year. So the Missouri remains a waterway of minor importance. And the problem of flooding still remains. The job of developing the Missouri River Basin water resources is far from over, and many questions have been raised. To help find some of the answers, a computer study is being made to determine how the rivers of the basin can be made more productive. This study makes it possible to compare the cost of using the land in different ways. Is it more economical to use the land for dry farming and grazing? Or should some of this land be flooded to provide more reservoirs for irrigated farming? To what extent can the Missouri system be used to dispose of stormwater and sewage without eliminating the use of the basin rivers for recreation? Is it worth the cost of trying to make the Missouri into an important inland waterway? Or should other forms of transportation be expanded? The Missouri no longer is a highway to the west, as it was during the settlement of the continent. But the river is still important, and some of the most productive farms in the world are within its basin. Efforts to tame the river continue. Much still has to be done to fulfill the different needs of the people who live in the Missouri River Basin.
Throughout the centuries, the male and female forms of the human body have been looked upon as expressions of great beauty and perfection. The human body, however, is more than a thing of beauty. The human body is the most complex of living things. Many of our body processes are regulated by a digestive system, a respiratory system, a circulatory system, and an excretory system. These are just some of the body systems which, working together, maintain life. But life must be initiated as well as maintained, and this is the essential function of the reproductive system, to bring new life into the world. Unlike the other systems of the body, the reproductive system differs in the male and in the female. Yet these systems show many similarities. Each system has a pair of main organs. These are the sex glands called gonads. In each system, there is also a series of tubes. One function of the gonads is to produce reproductive cells. The other function is to produce hormones. These chemical substances, hormones, are particularly related to growth and development. Unlike the other systems that maintain life in the body from earliest childhood, the reproductive system is not fully functional until that period of life known as adolescence. During this time, the hormones produced by the gonads cause certain changes in our bodies. These changes are part of growing up, of maturing. These body changes in the male and female may occur during the early or later years of adolescence, but they are all caused by the hormones of the gonads. Now let's take up the other vital function of the gonads. Each pair produces reproductive cells, or gametes. After the gametes unite, the development of a new individual begins. The gametes produced by the male are sperm, tiny living cells, here greatly magnified. Otherwise, they would be invisible. These are sperm of the human male. The gamete produced by the female gonad is an ovum or egg. Here, also highly magnified, is an ovum of a human female. The ovum is much larger than the sperm cell and is barely visible to the naked eye. The sperm cell of the male carries certain heritable characteristics of the father, and the larger ovum of the female carries certain heritable characteristics of the mother. When these two cells unite, a new individual with characteristics from both parents begins to develop. The producing of reproductive cells, or gametes, is a function that is common to both the male and female gonads. There are other similarities. In both systems, there is a pair of tubes. These tubes carry the reproductive cells produced by the gonads to the place where the cells may unite. In addition to such similarities, there are differences. For instance, the organs of the male reproductive system are chiefly external, outside the body, while the organs of the female are chiefly internal, within the body. We'll see other differences as we learn more details about, first, the female reproductive system. We've already seen the gonads of the female reproductive system. These are called ovaries, or egg producers. Near the ovaries are the tubes we've seen. They are called oviducts, or fallopian tubes. They carry the eggs, or ova, into the uterus. Within the pear-shaped muscular uterus, the new individual grows and develops until birth. Through its lower part, called the cervix, the uterus connects with the vagina. This side view shows how the vagina reaches to the surface of the body. Close to the surface, the vagina contains the hymen, a thin partial membrane. Slightly above the opening of the vagina is an organ called the clitoris. Around these organs are the labia, which are external folds of skin. These organs of the female should not be confused with other adjacent organs, such as the anus, through which the body wastes are eliminated. Also, the adjacent bladder and urethra of the urinary system are not connected with the organs of the reproductive system. The urethra and the vagina have independent exits between the labia. Now, let's see how the female reproductive system functions. Let's begin with this enlarged cutaway view of an ovary. Inside the ovary, there are many reproductive cells, or ova. About once every 28 days, one of these ova, or eggs, in one of the ovaries, ripens, and with its supporting cells, bursts through the wall of the ovary. The ripe ovum enters the oviduct, or fallopian tube. We see that the ripe ovum moves through the tube. If fertilization or union with a sperm cell occurs, the new individual will begin to develop as the ovum moves through the tube toward the uterus. During the days the ovum approaches the uterus, the lining of this organ gradually becomes thick and spongy with a rich supply of blood vessels. If the ovum entering the uterus has been fertilized, the extra blood supply will provide nutrients and oxygen for the developing individual. If the ovum has not been fertilized, it slowly disintegrates, usually in the uterus. Some days later, part of the spongy lining of the uterus also disintegrates and flows out through the vagina. The fluid, a mixture of blood and lining cells of the uterus, is discharged. This is called the menstrual flow. This process, menstruation, occurs about every 28 days and is a normal process. Menstruation does not occur, however, if fertilization takes place. To understand fertilization, we must also understand the male reproductive system. As in the female, the gonads are the main organs. In the male, they are called testes. There are two testes enclosed in a pouch of skin, the scrotum, located outside the body. By looking closer at a single testis, we see that it is made up of a mass of tiny coiled tubules or small tubes. The cells lining these tubules produce sperm, the reproductive cells or gametes of the male. Here in cross-section, we see that these sperm-producing tubules empty into other tubules outside the testis, which store the sperm. These sperm-storing tubules empty into a larger tube called the vas deferens. The vas deferens carries the sperm up into the body cavity. At the end of the vas deferens lie two glands, the prostate gland and the seminal vesicles. The prostate gland and the seminal vesicles produce a fluid. Sperm cells are mixed with this fluid as they pass into the next tube, the urethra. The sperm-laden fluid is called semen. Although the urethra carries semen, it is also attached to the bladder of the urinary system. However, it's important for us to remember that in the human male, the urethra does not function in both systems at the same time. The urethra passes through an external organ, the penis. Through this organ, semen with its sperm leaves the male body. Sometimes during adolescence, semen may be released during sleep. This is a normal occurrence. Now that we've learned something about the function of the male system, let's see how both systems contribute to the process of fertilization. Semen, usually containing 200 or 300 million sperm, is deposited within the vagina of the female. Each sperm consists of a head, or nucleus, which carries the heritable characteristics of the male parent, and a tail, which propels the cell. Sperm move from the vagina into the uterus. After passing through the vagina and uterus, the sperm continue to move into the oviducts. It is also the oviduct that receives a ripe ovum or egg. About every 28 days, a ripe ovum passes from one of the ovaries and enters an oviduct. Fertilization of the ovum takes place in the upper part of the oviduct. It occurs when one of the millions of sperm cells, seen here under the microscope, moves through the surrounding cells of the ovum, as shown in this simplified diagram. The sperm cell then penetrates the ovum. The position of the sperm and ovum in this diagram are similar to what we'll see in the next scene, a microscopic view of human fertilization. Of the many sperm cells, only the one at the upper right in this picture enters the ovum. After the head of one sperm enters, the surface of the ovum changes and prevents any other sperm cells from entering. During the next few days, the fertilized ovum or zygote begins to develop by dividing into many cells. Here we see only the first stage of 2 cells. The zygote is the beginning of a new individual. As the zygote grows and develops, it is called an embryo. The embryo, passing from the oviduct, enters the uterus and after several days embeds itself in the thick, blood-enriched lining of this organ. Here, the embryo gets its nourishment and continues to develop. After a period of development, usually 9 months, a new individual is born, a new human being who, in turn, will continue human life for another generation. This new individual is the result of the combined functions of the male and female reproductive systems. These systems consist of main organs called gonads, which produce hormones. An equally important function of the gonads is to produce and store reproductive cells called gametes. We learned that the systems include tubes, which carry the reproductive cells to the place where fertilization occurs. We saw human fertilization actually occur. Fertilization produces a zygote, or the beginnings of a new individual, which is nourished and developed within the uterus. These systems, which account for the differences in male and female, are vital parts of the human body. The reproductive systems make possible the continuance of human life. Understanding the functions of these systems is important in preparing for family life, as well as in maintaining your physical and mental health.
Long ago, when these ancient Grecian temples were new, hemp was already old in the service of mankind. For thousands of years even then, this plant had been grown for cordage and coarse cloth in China and elsewhere in the East. For centuries prior to about 1850, all the ships that sailed the western seas were rigged with hempen rope and sails. For the sailor, no less than the hangman, hemp was indispensable. A 44-gun frigate, like our cherished old Ironsides, took over 60 tons of hemp for rigging. Including an anchor cable 25 inches in circumference. The Conestoga wagons and prairie schooners of pioneer days were covered with hempen canvas. Indeed, the very word canvas comes from the Arabic word for hemp. In those days, hemp was an important crop in Kentucky and Missouri. Then came cheaper imported fibers for cordage, like jute, sisal, and manila hemp, and the culture of hemp in America declined. But now, with Philippine and East Indian sources of hemp in the hands of the Japanese, and shipment of jute from India curtailed, American hemp must meet the needs of our Army and Navy as well as of our industries.
In 1942, patriotic farmers at the government's request planted 36,000 acres of seed hemp, an increase of several thousand%. The goal for 1943 is 50,000 acres of seed hemp. In Kentucky, much of the seed hemp acreage is on river bottom land such as this, along the Kentucky River Gorge. Some of these fields are inaccessible except by boat. Thus, plans are afoot for a great expansion of the hemp industry as a part of the war program. This film is designed to tell farmers how to handle this ancient crop, now little known outside Kentucky and Wisconsin. This is hemp seed. Be careful how you use it. For to grow hemp legally, you must have a federal registration and tax stamp. This is provided for in your contract. Ask your AAA committeeman or your county agent about it. Don't forget, hemp demands a rich, well-drained soil such as is found here in the bluegrass region of Kentucky or in central Wisconsin. It must be loose and rich in organic matter. Poor soils won't do. Soil that will grow good corn will usually grow hemp. Hemp is not hard on the soil. In Kentucky, it has been grown for several years on the same ground, though this practice is not recommended. A dense and shady crop, hemp tends to choke out weeds. Here's a Canada thistle that couldn't stand the competition. Dead as a dodo. Thus, hemp leaves the ground in good condition for the following crop. For fiber, hemp should be sown 5 pecks to the acre. With drill, the closer the rows, the better. These rows are spaced about 4 inches. This hemp has been broadcast. Either way, it should be sown thick enough to grow a slender stalk. Here's an ideal stand. The right height to be harvested easily, thick enough to grow slender stalks that are easy to cut and process. Stalks like these here on the left, they yield the most fiber and the best. Those on the right are too coarse and woody. For seed, hemp is planted in hills like corn, sometimes by hand. Hemp is a dioecious plant. The female flower is inconspicuous, but the male flower is easily spotted. In seed production, after the pollen has been shed, these male plants are cut out. These are the seeds on a female plant. Hemp for fiber is ready to harvest when the pollen is shedding and the leaves are falling. In Kentucky, hemp harvest comes in August. Here, the old standby has been the self-rake reaper, which has been used for a generation or more. Hemp grows so luxuriantly in Kentucky that harvesting is sometimes difficult, which may account for the popularity of the self-rake with its lateral stroke. A modified rice binder has been used to some extent. This machine works well in average hemp. Recently, the improved hemp harvester, used for many years in Wisconsin, has been introduced in Kentucky. This machine spreads the hemp in a continuous swath. It is a far cry from this fast and efficient modern harvester to the Armstrong model of yore. But here's one kind of harvester, at least, that doesn't stall in the heaviest hemp. In Kentucky, hand cutting is practiced in opening fields for the machines. In Kentucky, hemp is shucked as soon as safe after cutting, to be spread out for retting later in the fall. In Wisconsin, hemp is harvested in September. Here, the hemp harvester with automatic spreader is standard equipment. Note how smoothly the rotating apron lays the swaths preparatory to retting. Here it is a common and essential practice to leave headlands around hemp fields. These strips may be planted to other crops, preferably small grain. Thus, the harvester has room to make its first round without preparatory hand cutting. Here the machine is running over corn stubble. When the cutter bar is much shorter than the hemp is tall, overlapping occurs. Not so good for retting. The standard cut is 8 to 9 feet. The length of time hemp is left on the ground to ret depends on the weather. The swaths must be turned to get a uniform ret. When the woody core breaks away readily, like this, the hemp is about ready to take up and bind into bundles. Well-retted hemp is light to dark gray. The fiber tends to pull away from the stalk. The presence of stalks in the bowstring stage indicates that retting is well underway. When hemp is short or tangled, or when the ground is too wet for machines, it is bound by hand. A wooden buck is used. Twine will do for tying, but the hemp itself makes a good band. When conditions are favorable, the pickup binder is commonly used. The swaths should lie smooth and even with stalks parallel. The picker won't work well in tangled hemp. After binding, hemp is shucked as soon as possible to stop further retting. In 1942, 14,000 acres of fiber hemp were harvested in the United States. The goal for 1943 is 300,000 acres. Thus, hemp, Cannabis sativa, the old standby cordage fiber, is staging a strong comeback. This is Kentucky hemp going into the dryer of a mill at Versailles. In the old days, breaking was done by hand, one of the hardest jobs known to man. Now the power breaker makes quick work of it. Spinning American hemp into rope yarn or twine in the old Kentucky River Mill at Frankfort, Kentucky. Another pioneer plant that has been making cordage for more than a century. All such plants will presently be turning out products spun from American-grown hemp. Twine of various kinds for tying, winding armatures, and upholsterers' work. Rope for marine rigging and towing, for hay forks, derricks, and heavy-duty tackle. Light-duty fire hose. Thread for shoes for millions of American soldiers. And parachute webbing for our paratroopers. As for the United States Navy, every battleship requires 34,000 feet of rope, and other craft accordingly. So here in the Boston Navy Yard, where cables for frigates were made long ago, crews are now working night and day making cordage for the fleet. In the old days, rope yarn was spun by hand. Today, even the rope walk is mechanized. 160 fathoms to go. The rope yarn feeds through holes in an iron plate. This is Manila hemp from the Navy's rapidly dwindling reserve. When that is gone, American hemp will go on duty again. Hemp for mooring ships, hemp for tow lines. Hemp for tackle and gear. Hemp for countless naval uses, both on ship and shore. Just as in the days when old Ironside sailed the seas victorious, with her hempen shrouds and hempen sails. Hemp for victory.